So I'd like to start the October 27th IDA regular meeting and call the meeting to order and open it up for public comment. Any members of the public that would like to be heard? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and move on to business. The first item is Fieldstone Comac 2 LLC. Tony?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. So Fieldstone Comac 2 LLC is phase 2. The agency did a project back in 2019 for the first phase. It was known as TBG Comac LLC or Fieldstone Phase 1. It's construction of a senior living apartments complex, 55 and older. So it's in Comac. There's vacant lots that have smaller separate buildings on Jericho Turnpike and Comac. Involved the demolition of those buildings, which total 15,000 square feet, and construct 111,000 approximately square foot building on 4 acres. And the project again will be 55 years and older rental apartment community with a total of 98 apartments. So there'll be 42 one-bedroom and 56 two-bedroom units. And then the applicant's proposing 5 units will be affordable at 80% AMI, and workforce units, I think 100% AMI, 5 units. So a total of 10 units will be affordable. And the development will also include a community center and an outdoor common spaces and a pool. And basically the intent is to have the phase 1 and 2 sort of together as a larger community complex and integrate social events for the residents. So the project costs are around $41 million, and there'll be around two jobs created that will be on site, public maintenance and little administration. And then the project estimated to create 125 direct construction jobs during the construction phase. And so the applicant is present, Paul Basilico, and his attorney, Peter Curry, Farrell Fritz. They also did an economic impact analysis and provided additional information. And then also Kevin Grims from the National Development Council prepared a report on the project. So we'll turn it over to Kevin to give his presentation of NDC, and then we'll turn it back to the applicants. So, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Tony. Madam Chair, members of the board. So Tony did a pretty thorough explanation of the project itself, $41 million. What I would note is that given the fact that the applicant has constructed a similar product next door, basically the same thing, another 98 unit, but we're in a different environment, a lot higher costs. I noticed that their development costs are about 30% higher than what it was a few years ago, thanks to increased costs in construction materials, and then of course we're dealing with a higher interest rate. So as Tony mentioned, we also have a 10% set aside, workforce housing, price less than 80% of AMI. So we're dealing with a very experienced team that have done many of these products, many of these facilities throughout Long Island and elsewhere. So we received an estimate from the town as complete taxes. As complete taxes came in from the tax assessor at $715,000. That's equivalent to almost $7,300 per unit. $7,300 per unit, even with 90% of the units being market rate, the income stream and the project isn't able to absorb those kind of taxes immediately. In fact, when you look, you can put it in there, when you apply those taxes to the operating pro forma, cash flow is negative. So obviously the development can't happen if the cash flow is negative. So what we proposed is to a 15-year pilot, which is consistent with your UTEP for residential developments. And the pilot starts as a 75% abatement, burns off by 5% in each of the next 14 years. So that is determined to be necessary to achieve financial feasibility. And I would note that even with the pilot, it's going to average well over 4,000 during the term. Even with that pilot, the returns are certainly not excessive. In fact, I would say they're a little on the marginal returns, but good enough to be financially feasible. Without the pilot, not financially feasible. Okay. So we mentioned the 15-year pilot. The average during that 15-year period is 443,000, an average of 4,500, which is still a very respectable dollar amount to pay per unit for each of the residential units. So to put that in perspective, that's more than a 12-time multiplier over what the current taxes are on the property. So that increment, obviously very strong for the taxing jurisdictions. And the predictability of that schedule with the taxes is regarded as essential to create financial feasibility. Okay. So there is the schedule. Again, it starts with a 75%, and this is similar to what was authorized for the previous development next door in, I think, 2018. So of the full taxes, there's a 38% abatement over the average over the 15 years. So the taxing jurisdictions get 62% of full taxes. Again, 4,500, very respectable dollar amount, good increment for the taxing jurisdictions. So in terms of looking at public benefit versus project benefit, we have the increment over the 15-year period of time of $6.6 million. Also, we value the affordable housing, the 10 units of affordable housing. So that is well in excess of the project benefits in the form of the pilot and the exemptions on sales tax and mortgage recorded tax. Okay. And as Tony mentioned, 125 short-term jobs, 2 full-time equivalent jobs, and no matter what kind of rental housing, there's an acute need for rental housing, market and affordable. This is senior market, senior affordable, a need on both fronts. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board? Seeing none, any other comments from the applicant?
Yes, Peter Curry, Farrell Fritz, 400 RXR Plaza, Uniondale, New York. With me is Paul Basilico, who is a principal of Fieldstone at Comac 2 LLC.
Rick,
And I'd like Paul to. Sorry. Nice. Thank you very much.
We get to
Felt like I had to confess something.
Talk about being in the spotlight.
So with me is Paul Basilico, who is a principal of the applicant, and Paul would like to speak about the experience of this builder in building residential housing and other types of commercial real estate on Long Island, and then also give you a little bit more detail on this particular project and what ties it to the other project, and then some of the differences that he's learned from the other project that have made this project slightly different. So Paul?
Thank you. So we are local Long Island developers. We've been developing for about 10 years, myself and my partner on Long Island. Primarily multifamily and single-tenant retail properties. So one of our most recent projects, we completed a 27-unit rental apartment building in Floral Park at the train station, along with an additional 5-unit building with a 5,000 square foot restaurant across the street. In the summer of 2020, we completed Fieldstone 1, which again is another 98-unit project, 55 and over, gym, community center, pool. That project was completed in the summer of 2020, which was right in COVID. We leased up in about 8 months, fully leased up, and since then we've been fully occupied with minimal turnover. We have a wait list of about, I think, 150 potential tenants. So some of the things we learned from that project when we moved on to look at starting this new project was the first project was a garden apartment style community due to the code, and we weren't allowed to do a 3-story building at that time. In speaking to the town, we were able to explain to them that the residents really prefer elevated buildings because it is 55 and over. So with this building, we were able to change the project to basically one entire building instead of garden apartments, 3-story with an elevator, which allows for more green space and also allows for the elevator for some of the elderly residents that we have. The project ultimately will be combined. They'll be combined together. We will have a new community center on the new property, which will be shared, but the tenants from the new property will have access to all the amenities from the old property. This area in Smithtown is centrally located, parks, beaches, South Shore, North Shore access. So we have extremely strong demand. And we think, the second phase will be leased up equally as quickly.
As you can see from the surrounding area, this project will enhance the area. So right now, the property is currently being used as trailer homes, a storage facility, very underutilized. And if you take a look at the aerial that we showed you, you can see that across the street and around, it's a little rough compared to the rest of Jericho Turnpike and that neighborhood. So adding this community will be very helpful to improving that whole area of Jericho Turnpike in Smithtown. As previously stated, it's 42 one-bedroom and 56 two-bedroom rentals, and the average apartment size for the one-bedrooms will be a little less than 700 square feet, and for the two-bedrooms, about 1,050 feet approximately for that. As Paul mentioned, the demand is clearly there. So if there's a 100-person or more than 100-person waiting list for the current building, this building, upon being completed, will lease up as rapidly, the thought is, and will immediately start generating an economic benefit to the community. As discussed, Long Island is still approximately 100,000 units short of where it should be for multifamily rental housing of all types. This is one small step toward meeting that need, and the more we keep doing this, I think the better off we are. Also, as mentioned, the project costs were approximately $41.2 million. We obtained an economic study, an economic impact analysis from Nelson Pope and Voorhees to indicate not only the direct economic, but the indirect and induced economic effect of the construction and operation of the project. So the 125 direct construction jobs that we mentioned previously will result in an additional 70 indirect and induced jobs during the term of the construction. So the overall income, the overall personal income, employment income will exceed $19 million. Additionally, the operation of the project, which is the 2 employees plus the amounts expended by the residents of the project, will result in an annual income, net income of $475,000 and have a $4.3 million annual economic effect on the Smithtown and Suffolk County community. We understand that you received Kevin's report, so we don't feel we need to comment on that. We've reviewed the report that Kevin prepared. We have really no issues with his analysis or his coming down on the proposed pilot. And at this time, we are requesting an abatement of real estate taxes in accordance with the schedule that Kevin has prepared, a partial abatement of mortgage taxes, and an exemption from sales taxes. And I'd like to open up the floor for any questions that the board members may have. And again, thank you for allowing us to present this application.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
I have a question. Hi, I'm Sandra. With the affordability part of the units, how did you come to 10%? Was it a mandate to build with the town of Smithtown or anything like that, or did you come up with that yourself?
No, there's no Smithtown mandate. And again, we're consistent with what was done on the last project, where it was workforce and affordable. So we stayed consistent with what we had delivered on
And
that
when did you
project.
say the last project was?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, when did you say the last project was?
It started in 2019,
Yeah.
completed in 2020.
Okay, all right, would there be any way that you consider writing in maybe 15 to 20% affordability because of what's been happening after COVID? Everybody needs, all the seniors need a place. I mean, we get calls every day, multiple calls, people just don't
I
like it.
guess my answer to that is going to have to be what was pointed out already, that the 30% increase in construction costs has made this project a lot dicier than the last one. I think 2019, interest rates were low, materials costs were low, employment costs were low. And at this stage of the game, you can see that, I think that project topped out at around $30 million all in. This is $41 million. So it's a significant increase, and to commit now, and essentially we're not sure how materials costs will go, and as long as they will not decrease. They may stabilize, but they will not decrease. It just makes it not very feasible to commit to a larger number of affordable workforce apartments at this time.
I have a couple of questions. The fact that these two pieces of property are right alongside one another, it's not obviously by coincidence. Did the developer have a master plan to develop these parcels separately? Did you buy them together?
No, we purchased the first property, which was a rundown motel. We had talked to the neighboring properties, but they were not ready at the time. We had thought about trying to do one larger project because there were some efficiencies with sewer and other reasons, but it didn't work out that way. After we built it, the neighbor saw how successful it was and he was looking to move anyway. And, he decided to reach out to us, and that's how we ended up with the second property.
And the dates of the properties that you bought, the first one was when, back in what year?
We closed in 2018 or 19. We were in contract from 2014 or 15.
And this one you just recently closed on?
We were in contract to purchase subject to the final approval.
Okay. On the affordable housing, you have 2 units. Do you know what those rents would be?
For the,
What?
we have projections. We projected, let's see.
It's in the Grimm's report. We projected
17 and 2200 for
Yeah.
ones and twos. 17 for one, 2200 for two.
Okay. And I wasn't involved with the initial project. I guess for some reason I wasn't here. One of the things that I have reservations about, obviously, in any type of residential development is that the construction jobs are good temporary jobs, but we also, when we give benefits, we also like to make sure that there's some type of long-term benefit in permanent jobs. And I understand on a real estate project, that's not sometimes feasible. But we try to weigh whatever jobs are made available on a permanent basis against what we're willing to give in the form of a benefit, so that it comes down to a cost dollar amount. So I have to be honest, I'm a little bit hesitant right now regarding that. We do need affordable housing. I know the area well. It definitely would be an improvement on the local landscape. I have to admit that.
Well, can I point you to the report that NPV did? So when considering jobs, just to consider jobs on site is one, but in the analysis of the additional 4 indirect employment jobs that were going to occur in the community and the overall economic increase resulting from the 6 jobs, as well as the spending by the residents throughout the community, all of those are important when you consider employment, it seems to me.
I understand that, but those jobs are very nebulous. you know, when you give an estimate as to real jobs that are associated with the site or the project, those are hands-on, really, we can sort of wrap our hands around and get a good handle on. I do understand the economic development benefit to the
Yeah,
area.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's true. I mean, there are enough years of analysis of it that to determine that that is typically what happens. So, you know, implant and the other ways that they determine these things, you know, that's through many years of hard determinations to take a look at projects and saying this really does result in these expenditures and this growth in employment.
I understand the nature of it, thank you, yes.
Thank you. Other questions?
Certainly you've done a wonderful job on, I'm gonna call it the first phase. So I have no doubt that you're not doing a great job on the second phase. The jobs that we were talking about, these jobs are in addition to, not construction, the permanent job,
Permanent.
in addition to the existing facility?
Correct. There's 3 full-time employees on site right now. We're gonna need to add 2 more. On top of that, we do have contract services for certain things that we can't do with our staff. That come either weekly or monthly.
Yep, I'm familiar with what they are.
Yeah.
I guess the other question I had, being 55 and older, I'm just not certain of the code in Smithtown. Does that mean that there is a prohibition against any school-age children living here?
Yeah, they have a specific, I think it's in the approvals that you can't have school-age children living on the property.
Right, so the dollars that are being paid here are pure to the school districts,
Correct.
correct?
No.
No, that was it. Thank you.
I have a question. Period of affordability. What is it? There's a note of workforce housing and affordable units. What's the period? Are they in perpetuity, or is there a specific term of 30 years, 50 years?
No,
The
because
affordable
it's
units?
an agreement with the agency, it's as long as the agency is involved.
Okay.
You know, this is directly in our closing documents with the agency.
So 15 years, right? 15-year pilot?
Yeah, that's
right.
So it would just be for 15 years.
That's right, yeah, just in terms of the documents, the terms of the pilot.
Correct. The term of the pilot.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. You mentioned some other projects that you recently completed. I think there was like a 27 unit, in Lowell Park.
Yeah.
Did you receive tax abatements on that project?
On that project, we did not receive tax abatement. We did not request it. It was a renovation of an existing building that was it was like a catering facility, and then there was a new building across the street.
So it may not have qualified anyway if it was retail.
It did not qualify.
So they said there's no requirement under the municipal code of Smithtown for affordability, so they've, I think last time the agency asked them if they could do something as far as affordability, and they came up with 10 units, and that seemed to be an agreement that the board moved ahead with, so.
Well, actually, what we said was 20%. I don't remember.
I don't
It
remember
may
that.
not have been you, but I know we talked to someone else and they the percentage of affordable units, and that worked for us.
Yeah, that was at Smith.
Yeah,
That's
that- it was like a trade-off,
Yeah. And I think they were permanent affordability.
yes, permanent affordability.
I am double checking. I've just reached out to the town planner in Smithtown because it's my understanding there's a requirement
Should be. I thought all towns out
There,
there changed it with
there's a
town
requirement if you're in excess of the zoning code,
in excess of what I'm sorry.
of the zoning code. So if it's 10 units per acre and you go for 12, then you are required. If you're at 8 units per acre, you're not required. That's how I understand it.
Okay, what is the pleasure of this board?
I need more time.
I think we have to tell them if they don't know what the issues are.
What you're saying, you just financially, it's not feasible to raise the percentage of affordable units?
It is not. I mean, Kevin mentioned his impression that this is a barely financeable project as is. So to add additional affordable units requiring lower rents, or, you know, by virtue of having to rent the apartments, or only offering them at lower rents, it makes the project not financeable.
Would you consider making the affordable units permanent
I was
affordability?
gonna say in exchange for the amount.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd have to just quick
Yeah.
check and
It's something we'd have to think about.
I'm gonna summarize the issues for you.
I'm sorry?
I'm gonna summarize the issues for you, so that everything's clear and it's out on the table, so. Let's start. All right, so we have a project that you wanna build, you have a highly successful project, affordable and senior housing is a need on Long Island, we recognize that. You're gonna significantly contribute to the tax base without adding additional kids to the schools, so we view that as a good thing. It doesn't create a ton of jobs other than short-term jobs, right? There's just 2 additional jobs. A lot of these projects that we work on, as you know, 20, 30, 50 jobs. So that's part of it, as I think Kevin alluded to. Then we've got the affordable housing component, 15 years with that running off, and that's just not something I think this board is comfortable with. So that's gonna create an issue for us unless there's gonna be a way to resolve it. I mean, did I leave anything out?
No.
No, if I may add too, I sit on the board of the Long Island Housing Partnership, and we're very familiar with the affordability aspect and developers coming to develop properties. So not that many developers come in front of the IDA for benefit. They do it on their own, however they may do it. There's a certain percentage, but not all. So I think if we can come to an agreement as to how we treat these 10% affordables as being permanent, then that would be, I think, help move us in the right direction. I don't want to speak for the whole board. I just want to give you my particular opinion. Because affordability is a big thing. We're losing the seniors, number one. We're losing the younger population. I have 3 children. None of them live on Long Island. So we understand, on the LIHP too, we understand the need for affordable housing. That's why it's such an important component, especially when you come and you ask for financial assistance of the size. So.
Yeah, I think people tend to divorce the work aspect of economic development from the living aspect of economic development, where they can't be divorced at all. If you can't find housing, you can't work on Long Island. So there is, the two are so integrated that when we come to the project and people say, jobs on site, or we always say, well, people can't work anyplace else if they don't have a place to live. So these are important to work, despite the fact that only 2 people work there or 5 people work there in the entire project. We have to consider these things holistically. We'll take back the request for permanent. I mean, I frankly have never seen that. That would require some sort of covenant, which is typically a covenant that's done by a town or other agency in terms of giving their own set of economic benefits. I've seen it in tax credit deals and others, and even those. The period of affordability on a tax credit deal is finite. It's not infinite. So even New York City grants, again, it's not infinite. It could be for 40 years, but it's not infinite. So
If Bill has to figure out the impact of the rule of perpetuity on this transaction.
21 years in life and being, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to make it 99 years, that'll
Yeah,
avoid
that would be
quibble.
different.
And that's an easy CNR. I mean, that's done all the time, if you wanted to.
Yeah, understood. And, you know, well, the question is, you know, who it would run to and, you know, so we could work it out, but that is something that we'll have to take back and discuss. I would like to discuss it in the context of the application being accepted as something to be dealt with before final authorizing resolution. So that is, I think, the appropriate way to handle the request, so.
I think in answer to your question, we've expressed very much good faith in how we view this project. So I don't know that that's a necessary step as much as, you know, you may think it is, but I would make a motion to table it, you know, if that's acceptable to other members of the board.
I will second.
Okay, is there another motion to consider before we take the tabling motion? Okay, so the tabling motion, because there's no other motion, Tony, roll call?
Yes, I was just wondering, we don't even have to do that anymore, because we're not remote.
Okay, so all those in favor?
You reminded me of that last meeting.
That's right.
And then I just realized it as we were going through
Okay.
it, so.
All those in favor with tabling this?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Motion passes. It's tabled.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sign the sign-in sheet. The IDA is trying to have people sign it.
No, I will.
You will? Okay.
People on me, it's not as difficult as they used to. That's
That's all I had. The whole thing didn't come up.
Thank you.
Jump to the next one. Go back in and open it back up.
Just waiting. Thank you.
So next on the agenda is Sunrise of Northport. Kevin or Tony, do you want to give an overview?
Thank you, Sarah. So Sunrise Assisted Living constructed a similar project, almost identical, West Hills Road, Huntington Station back the project closed with the agency in 2018. So this project is in East Northport on Pulaski Road. It was formerly a farm or a farmhouse. I remember going there, buying produce and all. So it involves the demolition of a small building and then construct a 77,500 square foot building on 6 acres for an assisted living facility with a memory care unit. So it'd be proposed 90-unit development with 112 beds. And again, Alzheimer's memory care unit in this 2-story building. So the project cost us about $54.6 million, and estimated to create 68 jobs over a 2-year period after it's completed. And the project is estimated to create 52 direct construction jobs. So Kevin has done an analysis of the financial need of the project, so I'll turn it over to Kevin of NDC, National Development.
Mix it up, but change sides. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, Tony, again, very thorough explanation. This is very similar to a product that was placed into service just a few years ago. This is a residential development, but as an assisted living facility, I started to review assisted living facilities a few years ago, and the numbers, first time I reviewed it, actually, this was the first one I reviewed several years ago, 5 years ago, so. And the numbers were startling to me just in terms of the income and the expenses. So in essence, even though it's a residential facility, it's more like an operating business because there's such a level of services being delivered to the residents. And it's also very high impact in terms of job creation. So although it is a residential facility, it's more of an operating business. And that's when I go through the pilot, it's equivalent to the standard commercial abatement through the 485B, which is standard for not only Suffolk County IDA, but all the IDAs throughout New York State. 50 assisted living facility, and then 40 memory care units as well. So because of the memory care units, again, a high level of services delivered to the residents. And because of such a high level of services, the rents are a lot different than your standard residential development, a lot higher than what we normally see for standard residential. So from an income perspective and an operational expenses, it's very different. I think many of you in your drives, you all see Sunrise assisted living facilities. They're prevalent throughout the island and throughout the country. So the development costs are high. With assisted living facilities, you have things like a full-service kitchens and other amenities and features you don't see in your standard residential unit. So the development costs are a lot higher. In this case, it's over $600,000 per unit. So again, this development team, as every developer, is experiencing significant cost increases due to the increases in materials. So $54 million, and the development package includes payment in lieu of taxes, as well as exemptions on sales tax and mortgage recording tax. The current taxes are $22,000. The estimate that we received from the tax assessor is $389,000, or equivalent to $4,300 per unit. And I discussed this with Tony and Kelly and others, is that number is actually lower than the full tax estimate of their previous development. And that has to do with, given the existing school district is in, and the Dave, what's the issue?
The issue is, this is in East Northport School District, where the LIPA power plant is.
Yeah.
And so the LIPA power plant subsidizes the taxing jurisdictions, including the school, significantly. And because of a recent settlement with LIPA over that, the amount of money that the taxing jurisdictions are going to get over time, including during the life of this pilot, will decrease significantly and will result in significant tax increases within that school district. So they, at the moment, enjoy, in this section of Huntington, much lower tax rate than most of Huntington, and that's going to change. So that's why when you take an exact assessment of the building that Sunrise has already built, and the assessment is exactly the same. It's the same blueprint on almost the same acreage, and what it came out to was well over 20% less in taxes, and that's because of the lower tax rate that's currently enjoyed by within the school district, that's going to be phased out over time with the LIPA settlement.
Yeah. So the pilot itself is proposed based upon the standard 45B. Standard 45B for a commercial facility, for purposes of mitigating risk, because given the fact that I had equated this more to an operating business, more so than residential development, you have a higher level of risk with these facilities. The absorption period tends to be longer to get the building fully occupied, because your universe of prospective renters is lower than a standard residential development. So the proposed financial incentive package is an acknowledgement, is no deviation from your uniform tax exemption, consistent with the commercial exemption through 45B. So that's a 10-year schedule, starting with a 50% abatement that reduces 5% in each of the subsequent 9 years. So the average that would be paid during the 10 years is $339,000, or an average of almost $3,800 per unit. And I would note that that is a 15-time multiplier from the existing taxes that are paid on the underperforming property right now. So here you see the schedule, again, 10 years. Oh, if you could just advance it 2 more. Yeah. So the abatement starts at 50%, reduced by 5%. There's no deviation from your UTEP, and again, this is based upon the 45 schedule. And that increment over that period of time is $3.4 million, which exceeds the benefits provided to the project itself. Given that this is more like, all right, if you could advance it 1 more. I think something that's very different from your standard residential is the permanent jobs. Kevin, you acknowledge that the last one is only 2 permanent jobs, but the permanent jobs for an assisted living facility is considerable. 50, oh, 1 more, I'm sorry. Those 83, those are the construction jobs. What I didn't put in there is that 58 full-time equivalent jobs that will be created after the facility goes into production. And like all rental facility, the special needs housing, there's an acute demand for it throughout Long Island. You have to answer any questions.
Can we just, some of the, Philip wanted to speak for a second, just based on some of the information that's on.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Philip Krosky. I'm Senior Vice President with Sunrise Senior Living. Thanks for having us here. We'll do a presentation. I'll reintroduce. But just to the numbers, the good news is they're low.
Okay.
The full-time equivalent jobs are going to be closer to 80.
80 to 84 when we stabilize.
Right, and then the construction jobs are closer to 145.
Okay, so that 83 full-time.
That's in the
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in the building when we stabilize, and we'll walk through that a little bit.
And the reason for some of the lower numbers on the full-time does have to do with COVID. We expect that those will improve over time, and so we don't just want to be. Yeah. So Tony, you want to?
Yeah, so Kevin, you finished with your presentation? And then the board have any questions for Kevin?
Yeah, I have some questions. Hey Kevin, how you doing? As always, I appreciate the reports. Very informative and helpful when looking at these projects. Similar questions to another project in past months that you had presented on. In this particular presentation, you didn't really give a comparison of providing assistance and what the numbers are without providing assistance. And looking at some of the metrics here and cash on cash returns and debt coverage ratio, etc. It really does seem like they're pretty substantial economic numbers. Not being able to see what would be without the assistance. Sometimes I'm a little reluctant, for projects where it seems like they may be able to do this without our assistance and still continue forward with the project. So if you could speak a little bit to why you didn't provide some of those numbers.
As always, awesome question. And I'll go back to, and I'm glad that we had the field zone prior to this, where you had a very clear distinction without taxes, without pilot, and with pilot. Without pilot, in the last development, it was negative cash flow. Doesn't work. Needs a pilot. It's not the same case in this. And the analysis that was presented to you in the report, I didn't include it here. But the difference is that the operating expenses are so high on these. So the pilot, as a percentage of the overall operating expenses, is a small amount. in stabilized years, the operating expenses are 110,000 per unit, as opposed to what you're used to seeing as 6,000 or 7,000 per unit, or $6,000 to $9,000 per unit. So the real estate taxes, as a percentage of the operating expenses, is not as high as it is on a standard residential development. It's a smaller fraction of your operating expenses. So it does not demonstrate that very clear distinction. Without pilot, there's no way it could be financially feasible. So we don't have a scenario in this case. However, I also said that this is more of equivalent to an operating commercial enterprise. And we have these 485B standard for commercial to mitigate risk and to incentivize this very significant incentive. So it's really more on a policy basis for purposes of thinking about a pilot for purposes for incentivizing that incentive as an overall way of mitigating risk and to create a very development friendly environment, because it's not easy with development right now based upon those development costs of 607. So the rents, you probably saw the rents, they jump out at you, almost 10,000 per unit. So when we're providing some level of tax relief, and again, it's fairly modest because overall, over those 10 years, it's a 25% savings in taxes over the 10 years, and it's a lot shorter term. But to the extent that taxes can be lower, it helps the developer in terms of delivering reasonable rents to these seniors. Because for those that have parents that are going into these residential facilities, I just got through with it, these numbers are very difficult to absorb for the families. So to the extent that there is some level of relief, a modest amount of tax relief, it helps with the overall feasibility of the development and perhaps delivering more reasonable rents.
And again, my concern is that we continue to, if we continue to approve projects where, the numbers don't necessarily support the need, I'm not very comfortable setting precedent where, it just becomes, well, business is risky, so, let's come for assistance because we're going to incentivize, more business to want to come here just on that premise. We're charged with, fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer that, when we're providing assistance, it's because, but for doing this, we wouldn't create these jobs, we wouldn't have this economic development. But, when we have numbers showing us that may not be the case, my concern is, we're kind of going beyond what we're supposed to be doing.
I kind of look at it just in terms of offsetting some of the other very difficult factors of doing business here and developing property here with the high real estate land costs and the high construction costs. I review these projects all over the state. The numbers down here, just in terms of land values and construction costs, are just so much higher than they are certainly upstate where we're reviewing other types of these facilities. And it's just very difficult to assemble it. So it's really, and again, it is consistent with standard incentive packages provided by IDAs on commercial facilities. So there's no deviation. I would have a very difficult time presenting something that is a deviation from your existing policy. But it is an existing policy to provide that kind of incentive for the developments that are important for rounding out what is needed here in Long Island.
Any other questions?
Well, Kevin, I appreciate your presentation and analysis, especially how you described it as an operating business. Because I think the last time that Sunrise was before us, I didn't really get that piece of it. Given that piece of it, the significant numbers of jobs it creates, I'm a lot less troubled by approving the application and then supporting the project that you presented about. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes. My name is David Curry. I'm with the law firm of Farrell Fritz, PC, 400 RXR Plaza, Uniondale, New York. With me is Philip Kroskin, Senior Vice President of Real Estate for Sunrise Senior Living, and Ben Simon, Senior Financial Analyst for Sunrise. For you, we have an application for a project at 1381-87 Pulaski Road, East Northport. The construction will be, for those of you who were on the board 4 years ago when we were in front of you, the exact same building that was already built on West Hills Road by the high school. They were able, because of the size and makeup of the land, they were actually able to put the same footprint of that building. So if you know that building, it's going to look exactly the same. And the drawings of them are in front of you. Two-story, approximately 77,500 square foot assisted living facility, 90 units, including 40 memory care units, 112 beds on 6.1 acres. The cost of this project is approximately $54.6 million, which is $15 million, approximately $15 million more than the exact same building cost 4 years ago to build in the same town, due to inflation and construction costs going through the roof, as we've been talking about all day. Higher labor costs, higher construction costs, and increased regulations on the healthcare industry, resulting in a even more increased need for financial assistance for this project to be built. As Tony said, the land is currently vacant. We have a change of zone in place to build this, and we're awaiting site plan approval. The agency's assistance is crucial to the success of this project. The unanticipated cost overruns, again, dealing with inflation, COVID. We need new facilities like this facility to attract younger retirees. They tend to attract younger retirees, which means that the cost, we've talked a lot about already, and Philip can talk more about it, but the rent component, when you hear $10,000 in rent, it sounds incredibly astronomical, but room, let's call it room, is only one component of it. It's room and board, where the residents get 3 square meals, and then that's still only part of what they receive. The level of service they receive to help them with their daily lives is so significant. And that is a part of the model for Sunrise, is that their income comes from that care, but these new facilities tend to attract younger retirees, and it takes time for that level of care to be increased. Sunrise currently employs approximately 440 full-time equivalent jobs in the county, and for a payroll of approximately $22.2 million. Over 90% of those jobs are Suffolk residents. The projections that we gave you are modest. We do anticipate that 68 jobs after 2 years is probably on the low side, and anticipate closer to, I think, 80. I don't want to talk for Philip, so I'm going to introduce again Philip Kroskin, the Senior Vice President, to give you a little bit more color about the company and the project.
Thanks. Thanks again for having us here. I'm actually very pleased to be here. Sunrise has been, I think, an operator, developer on Long Island for nearly 35 years. We're the largest one on Long Island, serving seniors. We established originally, you can go to the next page. We established originally what assisted living was in this country. And we brought it up from Virginia to the New York area very rapidly, and continue to serve seniors in that way. Your role here is, and it has become, very critical for the senior housing industry throughout Long Island. Ourselves and our competitors pretty much universally seek IDA help. These are very expensive areas in which to build and in which to operate. It's great that New York State has offered these benefits to create jobs. Mr. Slaughter, I would say without a shadow of a doubt, we would not be building in this region the way that we're building in this region if we didn't have the support. There's no doubt in my mind, I'm the head of real estate for the company. I have opportunities to build all over the nation. In fact, we've done 34 buildings in 8 years. We do it in the DC area, the New York area, the Boston area, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Toronto, Vancouver. I don't have to be in one area because I look at it as a portfolio for us, and I look at the investment returns, and I can weigh those investment returns against the opportunities elsewhere. We want to continue to be able to serve seniors in this area, and so I say without a shadow of a doubt, and I'll walk through some of the numbers in a moment, but for y'all's assistance, Sunrise would not be as prolific in the New York area as we are. To that end, let me just tell you a little bit about the company. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the services that we bring, and hopefully the benefits, and hopefully the partnership that will continue to form with you all. By no means do we presume that we're here and we're going to get a positive vote. We never do that. We assume that everybody has a position and a role, and we hope that we can convince you that there's value in investing in Sunrise and investing in the long-term viability of our creating jobs and creating a place for your mom, your dad, yourselves, your sisters, your brothers, your children over the next 20, 30 years. Our mission, if you wouldn't mind going back, and this is actually exciting for us because we've always had a mission to champion quality of life of all seniors. And we believe we've done an exceptional job of doing that because what we've done is we've established many, many ways in which seniors throughout the United States get cared for in a way that they never did in the past, because when we started 40 years ago, the idea of home care and the type of care that we provide in a home-like setting just didn't exist. You had skilled nursing, basically. And so we've created an industry where many, many seniors throughout the country really get some beautiful care. But the most exciting thing for us is we now have a vision statement, which you would think that a company like ours would have a vision statement, but now we get to think about the future, next 40 years. And we hope to bring that to Long Island, not just with this building, but in future buildings as well. And that's to create the preferred lifestyle for enjoying longer, healthy, happier lives. And we say preferred. Preferred is really meaningful to us because nobody wants to go to assisted living. It's not sugar-coated. It's not a great place to end up. It means that you need help. Walking, bathing, dressing, eating, going to the bathroom, you have dementia. We know that. It's tough. It's also tough on your families. We provide an alternative place where people can go where their families can then come visit and help. And we create an enormous value. We'll talk about value in a moment, not just the cost, but the value that you get for having your mom and dad come to our buildings. Can we get the next up? I think we've talked about this, and yeah, we're a big company. There's no doubt about that. That brings certain advantages, but most importantly, what you need to understand is every single building has a local operating team, period. Our buildings are operated by people who live here, who grew up here, who work here. This is their livelihood. These are their neighbors, their friends, your neighbors, your friends. So our executive directors, they're parts of the chambers of commerce and the local libraries initiatives. The Sunrise of Huntington we just built. We have a senior club with Walt Whitman High School across the way. We do intergenerational programming. We bring in outside entertainers. So we're a part of the community as that individual building. The benefits that you get is that you get professionalism, consistency of care, better food services because we can source food in ways that maybe others can't. So there's some real benefits of being a large company, but at the same time, we make sure that it remains local because we are dealing with that mother, that father, that daughter, and that son, and not 21,000. Next slide, please. I just thought I'd show this to you all. This is Sunrise of Huntington. I really encourage you all, if you haven't been in any of our buildings or any of our competitors' buildings for that matter, if you haven't been in a while, I really encourage you to go. They're wonderful experiences. This building will blow you away. You walk in and that comment preferred, we want you to be envious of your mom or your dad coming into our building. We want you to say, oh gosh, wish I could eat here every day, or I wish I could go to the activities here every day. We want it to be a great lifestyle, and oh, by the way, you're also getting care. This building is spectacular, and probably the only time in my real estate career did we, in the same town, it's unusual, find a piece of dirt that we could literally pick up the same building and put it down, and that's what the building in Northport is going to look like. We've changed the facade around. Obviously, the entry sequence is a little bit different, but I'm really encouraged by the way that building looks, and so far the way it's performing, in spite of the fact that, quite honestly, we opened up into COVID, and quite honestly, we dealt with very, very significant delays from New York State in getting our license. In fact, it was a full year. We sat on a fully completed building for a full year. We were waiting for New York State to issue our license, and that had nothing to do with Sunrise. New York State continued to say, DOH, we're the best in the business. You got, you know, dozens and dozens of buildings. You guys have zero negative deficiencies. It's just they were not issuing licenses. They were just stuck in their vortex of everything else. But thankfully, we're open and we're filling. What I'd like to say is, that building's at about 60% occupancy and 68 employees. So we have all of our full-time employees obviously in there, and then as we get more occupancy, the employee go up because it's a variable staffing model. By example, Sunrise at Dix Hills, that building had, in 2019, had
106 employees.
106 employees, comparable sized building at a 90% occupancy. Even though we're forecasting 83 odd employees here, we're probably underestimating the potential of what the building could produce. Next up. I think these speak to some of the values. 112 seniors will be, potentially, at a full building, which would be great if we could have a full building all the time. Obviously, thousands of individuals served over the lifetime, and approximately 90 jobs. I think many of the other things here just sort of represent the quality, the care, the fit, the finish. We hope that, you all look at this building and go, we were a partner in this building and we helped to bring it to fruition, and we're proud of what it is both today and in the future. Again, I encourage you to go to Dix Hills. That building is 15 odd years old. And when we were producing this building and meeting with the neighbors, the adjacent neighbors, the Huntington building, many of them said, when we went to Dix Hills, that new building of yours looks great. And at that point in time, I was like, well, that building's 13 years old. Well, that's just an indication of the way that we keep up our buildings for our residents. Next. The location here is off Pulaski Highway. It was an old fruit stand. It's a vacant parcel now, sort of overgrown at Old Bridge Road, just east of the train, which is beneficial for us because it helps to bring employees to our building as well. We have a bus stop right nearby. We've communicated really well with the adjacent neighbors. We have real good support from all of them. Next slide. The building is an unusual building for us. In fact, most of our buildings don't go 2 stories and this long. We found we really like this building. Our residents really like this building because you walk into a central core where all of the common activities occur, and then you have 4 neighborhoods, one on the left, one on the right, upstairs, one on the left, one on the right, and they're very close proximity to the central core, and it's just a nice, clean, easy to utilize building. The upstairs neighborhoods are memory care. They provide security for our residents. They do their dining within within those floors. They do their activities within those floors. We have massive terraces that the residents can go out, but by no means they are not locked down. Those residents with their caregivers or their families obviously have full access to the rest of the building as long as they're not wander risks and we can look after them safely. You'll notice also on the right-hand side, the far right-hand side of this building, like the other building, will have a wastewater treatment plant. As you all know, there's not many sewer options within Suffolk County, so this goes to the expense. These plants cost close to $2.5 million to build. They're also quite expensive to operate. For us, we have to have someone on site every single day from the engineering office to test the plants. Plus, we have to have massive backup generators, as you imagine. That's not a low-cost number. Another thing that we're providing, not just for our residents, but this is something that I've been very passionate about. You'll notice up front there looks like a big circle. If any of you have had an opportunity, that's a meditation Bible. I utilized one of these years ago when my mom was passing at the hospital. I found it to be very, very beneficial. It's a walking meditation. It gives you a great opportunity to sort of just be, and we found that our families, our residents, and even community members, we built one up in Newton, Massachusetts, are utilizing it, and it's a really special place. So we're happy to kind of build another one here, and hopefully the community would utilize it. Most importantly, on the right-hand side, I'm going to point to it here. There's a late 19th century, early 19th century farmhouse that's on the corner there. It's not a historically designated farmhouse, but the historic, the name of it, the Historic Preservation Group indicated a strong desire for us to preserve that. In lieu of fighting it, I mean, it's a hot corner for us. It's a good advertising corner for us, and certainly it's one that I would have preferred to remove the building and not have that additional expense. We have decided to preserve that building. Initially, it'll be used for construction offices. Then we'll turn it into a marketing and sales office, and then we'll open it up and we'll probably offer it for local community groups, boys and girls clubs, whatever the case may be, to utilize it as they need, and as a nice little parking lot out front. Our residents maybe will have luncheons or little lectures or teas, something off campus that we can go to without having to go physically off campus. All in all, I think it's a beautiful development for both landscaping. Good representation of the labyrinth up front and of the building as it runs down the street. I think that if you ride along Pulaski a lot, I think you'll find that this building probably adds a lot to the aesthetic of the entire area as you drive down there. And next one. Just coming up from the entry drive, we did an unusual thing here. We moved the entry drive off of the T intersection with the adjacent street. That was due in large part, in total part, to our negotiations and relationship with the neighbors. There was a real concern on their part. Well, I would say unfounded, because our staff would never really drive through and go across. They were very concerned about cross traffic into their neighborhood. So in an effort to appease them and work with them, we offset that driveway. And we were able to get the county to allow us to do that too. So that's something that we're very pleased that we could do, and the neighborhood is very pleased about it. So that sort of represents the building, the project. Maybe just go back 2 slides and we'll leave that up while I talk about a couple of other things that I want to address. Financially, I do want to address the $10,000 number. I think it's very important because I know that you all spoke about affordability a moment ago with the previous board, and I think what you have to understand is that we charge 2 rates in our building, effectively 2 rates. One is what we're going to call the accommodations rate, and then the other rate is your care rate. Your accommodations rate is literally everything that you need for your entire life without care. That means that covers your real estate, that covers your utilities, that covers your food, that covers your activities, that everything that you could possibly spend if you were living in an apartment or in a house. That number would cover everything that you don't need anything else. You don't need to spend another dime to live your life but for that number. Now that number, if you're living in a studio apartment in our building, is around $4,800 a month. It's about $160 a day. Now, we do get about 20% of our residents will come in on what we call base, no additional care. Those are residents who are just going to pay that $4,800, $5,500, $6,500, depending on if they're going in 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, if they're getting a larger building, a larger unit. As that resident matures through their care needs, if they need help in the morning, getting up out of bed, maybe putting on their clothes, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, that number gets charged as a separate number, and it can go up. And so you hear a $10,000 number. What it is, it's a combination of getting that daily care as well as living your daily life. So if you do a side-by-side comparison, if, like I did, and I know many of you are dealing with this and have done this, in-home healthcare, 2 years ago, I was paying $27 an hour for my father's in-home care people to be there from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Now, he lived down in Virginia Beach, I lived in Bethesda, Maryland, and every week and a half to 2 weeks, something would happen, I would have to get in the car and I'd drive down, and that would affect my work. Well, there's value lost there for me. I'd have to spend all that money. He lived in a house alone. There's so many value creations that we have by being in the building, knowing that your parent is well taken care of. The numbers are actually less when you look at it on a comparison by comparison basis, but when you consider the comfort, the safety, and security of knowing that your loved one is being well taken care of, it's an extremely huge value. To some of the numbers about the IDA benefits. Dave was kind enough to tell you that we've gone from about a $31 million building in Huntington about a $54 million building now with this one. As you can imagine, and interest rates, by the way, have gone up. Equity dollars have not reduced their expected rate of return, because we have to produce a rate of return for our owners, the people who are investing dollars into this. So with interest rates going up, the cost of the building going up 40%, while yes, we have a lower rate of taxes in this one as we did the other one because of the upfront, the sales tax savings on purchasing of goods, the mortgage tax savings, and then ultimately, which on his schedule he had it, those first really 3 to 5 years of pilot benefits that we're getting, where we're reducing a couple $100,000, is so unbelievably meaningful because we lose money in our first year and a half to 2 years. We have to build an operating deficit reserve. We don't open these buildings generally, we open them maybe 15 to 20% full. And so we have to fund all these operating deficits. With y'all's money allowing us to reduce our tax burden, it gives us a big leg up for that first 2 years while we're filling the building. So all the numbers have, I can tell you this building, even with your numbers, even with your benefit, is less profitable than the other building that you helped us with as well. Equity is giving us a little bit of room to work with. Yes, they're saying, okay, instead of the return that we were going to get, we'll take a slightly lower return. But all of those things, as you all know, we have to produce a rate of return, and you all are helping us get there. No doubt about that. I think, though, the last item is, we were talking about these younger retirees. People are moving out of Long Island, we know that, right? One of the great benefits of our building is it allows people to stay here in Long Island and care for their parents here in Long Island. And in fact, we find that a good portion of our residents are imported, meaning people who are bringing their mom and dad back from maybe another place and they're living here, and mom or dad needs help. So they'll move mom or dad into the building. So our shopper generally is that adult caregiving child. Our average age is 86 years old. So I think it's good for Long Island, not just for job creation, but it also helps to retain and bring people back in. So those are all my comments. Again, I really thank you for the time. I might have been a little long-winded. I'm obviously very passionate about being here and about what we do. We hope that we can partner with you guys once again. We think we've done a good job on the other building.
Thank you so much. Questions? Sandra?
Hi, my name is Sandra. I have a mass one. So you were saying that everything is like pretty much all inclusive?
Yes.
What about like the medical? They have nurses or doctors on staff and
Yes, so let's clearly define, we are not a medical provider. So we do have wellness suites where your doctor can come in, and we do have doctors that come in, and your Medicare coverage will pay for that doctor's visit. We also have physical therapists who will come in, like they would come to your house maybe, and your Medicare would pay for those physical therapists. Sunrise does not do that. We provide the avenue by which that our nurses can be your advocate, can be your wellness concierge, but we won't do medical care.
back and forth to the doctor, is that something, no transportation?
We provide transportation.
Back and forth to the doctor?
We have a bus and an SUV that we use for that.
And the, I don't know what you would call them, the attendant, the nurse, the aide?
Care managers.
Care manager.
Everybody's got their vernacular.
They would go with the,
Oftentimes, absolutely, they will go with. But a lot of times, again, our families are still actively involved, so a lot of times a family will come pick up. But if they're not available, then absolutely, our care managers will go along with.
so you step in where they're lacking?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we'd love to have more visitors. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen as often as you would like, but you know how that is.
Other questions?
I have a question. A couple of questions. How do you determine the need per area? In other words, you already have a facility built in Dix Hills, and I know there was another facility built near where I live in Smithtown, that's across the street from actually Field Trust, where they have a memory care facility. How do you determine the need for the area?
It's a great question. So let's start with pre-COVID, if we can. In Long Island specifically, this was the highest occupied, all of the assisted living buildings per our information that we have within our conference, the National Investment Conference, we're the highest occupied of any other place in the country. So it's an interesting area. They were around 93 to 95% occupied. And in fact, West Babylon? Engel Berman built a building called the Bristol, right next to our West Babylon building, which we were running at 98% occupancy at that point. And we didn't lose one resident, and they filled up. So Long Island is a unique beast in that our product is highly absorbed. People accept it and are willing to use it. So if I took the same demographic profile, and I'm going to answer your question in a second, if I took the same demographic profile of Long Island as, say, Southern California, our Southern California won't get as much occupancy as Long Island will. So that's the first start. All the buildings pre-COVID were heavily occupied. Those ones that were opening up were filling up pretty rapidly. Obviously, COVID knocked us all back pretty aggressively. We're all sitting at lower occupancies because we all protected our residents by closing the front door. We didn't allow anybody else to move in. And because of natural attrition, primarily death, not necessarily COVID, but just the regular natural attrition, we started to lose that. Okay, not an answer to your question. The answer to your question is demographic profiles allow us to establish a penetration opportunity based upon the current supply and the current amount of qualified seniors and qualified caregivers. And so we look at all of that, we impute the growth of those qualified seniors and qualified caregivers, and we impute the expected new buildings that would come in on the market. And when we do that, we look at the potential or the need for beds. And then based upon that, we say, we're good. Let's go ahead and put a building here.
Okay, just two other quick questions. You did meet the job numbers that you gave for the first project?
We are, where are we? Let me give you the numbers. I think we're there and we're under occupied. So Huntington is sitting at 67 employees as of September 22nd.
September 20, the end of September.
End of September, I'm sorry, September 2022. And we're currently at 55% occupancy on that building. So we're not there. I think we're going to get there probably in another 4 or 5 months. We met obviously the construction job numbers, but we opened Huntington into this storm of COVID and then another year of not being able to get licensed. But no doubt we're going to get there. Like I said, the 89% occupancy at Dix Hills produced 105 total jobs.
And the last question, you do understand the IDA as a Long Island First policy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you agreed to honor that policy to the best of your ability?
We've signed it. I can give you a little bit more detail on that if you'd like. The Sunrise of Huntington building had a much less intense Long Island First policy, but that building would have met this objectives of this policy today. We did end up with a local general contractor. We had five union trades, plumbers, electricians, concrete, steel, and site. So we had 5. Concrete, steel, and site. So we had 5 union contractors on that site.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, just to further that discussion a little bit. So I know in your documentation for this project, it looks like you plan on commencing construction pretty soon. I mean, I think it was like the November date that you were looking at.
That's been pushed,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Have you started a process at this point of, selecting contractors?
We have started looking, yes, what we're doing in this one is we are putting a bid out to the GCs, which we hadn't done in the past. So we're working with GCs to get bids from them.
Okay.
But it's not a full process, we're just getting them information. The full process would need to start, assuming we're fortunate enough to get a deal with you all, we would need to work with Tony and his office to make sure that it's properly advertised. Historically, what we would do is we would work with one GC as a negotiated, and then that GC would then put it out as a bid. But we're slowing things down. One, we want to make sure that we're advertising appropriately, and two, we're just getting information out to the various GCs.
Is there any reason you wouldn't be selecting a local general contractor?
No, I don't think so.
And Tony, just on a separate issue, just about the policy, because I know it's been in place, I guess, since about December, like almost a year now. And I know there is supposed to be stuff posted on the website. I did see the recent West Hampton project actually did post some bid documentation, but I didn't see anything else on there. So have any of the other projects
So was
commenced
any
or done?
projects that were approved starting in January, moving forward, so some of them haven't closed yet, so Venture, that closed, and so that's going to be posted.
All right, so none of them have gone forward
No,
as
but
commenced
then even that,
construction?
the VHBH, that didn't even close yet, and they wanted to get out in front of it.
No, yeah, I appreciate it, but yeah, I saw they were the only project that had posted anything to date, so that's why, I figured, I don't know if anything from January to now, if there's any of those other projects we approved, if they were
No, just that
in compliance
Venture,
or not.
Venture project.
We're, just to give you a little bit more detail, we're very familiar with managing through these local type of requirements and requests. It's the benefit, again, of having a large organization. We're doing it in Terrytown. Westchester pilot requires us to do local. And so right before walking in, I called my construction manager. We good? We're good. We got it. We'll handle it.
And just, I think this is gonna be, I think it said one of your, like your 10th location on Long Island.
We have 11, this will be our 12th.
This will be your 12th. Have all of them typically received benefits, or is it something that you had to do more in recent years?
You know what? I don't know 100%. I do know some did historically. We stopped building in Long Island somewhere around 2002, 2003, I think was the last time, before we did the Huntington building. We have one in Oceanside that, thanks to Ben, we just received IDA benefits this week. And that'll hopefully start end of this year, beginning of next year. To be blunt, those buildings probably didn't need it. Much lower costs. Operating expenses were nominal compared to what they are today. Regulatory environment has caused us to have a significant number of employees that we didn't have historically. Our margins have dropped dramatically. And that's before inflation. I'm just talking just the cost of doing this business has moved dramatically. And they were much, much less expensive buildings. So my guess is, and taxes have went up dramatically in New York since the time that they were doing that. So I know that some of them did, but it had expired by the time I came on in 2009, so
Gotcha.
I'm not aware.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion from the board?
So I do have one
Sure.
more question actually, because I going through documentation, it did say that you had reached out to local trades already in the documentation. I don't know what avenues, what that necessarily means. I mean, how have you reached out to?
Well, so we already have relationships with the operating engineers, the carpenters, the plumbers, the electricians. I'm sorry, not carpenters, plumbers, electricians. So we already have those relationships. We also have construction managers in Long Island who have deep relationships with them. We are already working on a project with E.W. Howe in Oceanside. So those relationships are kind of already there. So we're just touching base to make sure, because quite honestly, they're touching base with us. They know that this is coming, so they've asked the question, and we're already communicating.
Do you mind if I piggyback on Josh's question? With the contractors that you've been in contact with, but the subcontractors, if you hire a GC, if you put a bid out, I mean, how would that work? The GC would use some of your contractors, your subs, or?
Well, first, the
a lot
GC
of
is being
times-
hired subject to the Long Island First policy, subject to Sunrise's policy, and open book with us to manage.
Say no more.
Okay, is there a motion? Okay,
A second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really, thank you. That's really meaningful to us. We appreciate the time
Yes.
and the investment. Now, Dave's got a lot of work to do to get this thing. get this thing going. And I do encourage you all to take a visit of one of our buildings. The Huntington one would be great. I think you'll appreciate it.
To other business, the minutes.
Correct minutes from the last board meeting.
The umbrellas are all 36.
Okay, the September
Fantastic,
15th,
let me give you my
2022
card.
meeting, is there a motion to adopt the September 15th
You know how to,
meeting minutes?
Let me get out of here. I'll give you
Okay,
the
second. All those in favor? Aye.
I have to abstain, that wasn't.
One abstention, any noes, motion passes. Proposed budget 2023.
Kevin,
Yes, the committee, the Finance and Audit Committee met prior to our normal idea meeting. We made a motion with approval to move the proposed budget for 2023 to the board for approval. So moving forward, I think everybody has a copy of it. I would ask, request that the chairman make a request for motion.
Sure. Is there a motion to approve the 2023 budget?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, there's second?
Second.
Second by Chris, all those in favor?
Aye.
Open meetings law, amendments allowing public bodies remote attendance.
So Greg, so we had committee meetings prior to the full board meeting here, Audit and Finance, and then also Governance and Compliance. So Greg chairs the Governance and Compliance Committee. So did you want to give a synopsis of what the recommendation was for the committee?
Well, the recommendation from the committee was to put this before the board for a vote. I believe the view of the committee was to support the proposal because it would give us flexibility to board members to participate when they otherwise wouldn't be able to, because we would not have a workable remote access, sufficient. So as a key body, put everything into this memorandum, including notices that we have to provide, the form of public hearing that we have to undertake. And I think the committee's recommendation was that we recommend it to the board.
So to move it ahead, as far as authorizing the public hearing to be held, and then this will be brought back to the committee and I guess the full board at the next meeting to adopt the resolution for the remote attendance option.
A motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, any other business before us?
Nope.
Okay, we are adjourned, thank you.